Heard about. Okay, thanks. And the number of people who saw it on social media? Ah, okay, terrific. I won't ask if it was ours or the authors, but that's great. Thank you. And any other places that you're hearing about us?
Can you talk louder? Is the mic on?
Is the mic on? No. Well, that'll do it. Okay, is that better? Great. Any other places that you hear about our events? Okay. Really? Okay. Excellent.
I'm surprised you did the advertising.
Right. Well, I thought that was starting next week, so awesome. Okay. My name is Robin Glossner. First of all, I want to ask you, does anybody object if the people who are speaking, myself and Isaac and Jarrett, take off our masks when we're speaking? Okay. I'm gonna move this down because I'm short. All set. My name is Robin Glossner. I am the events coordinator here at the Odyssey Bookshop, and I'm very happy to welcome all of you here tonight and all of you out on Facebook to our event with Isaac Fitzgerald in conversation with Jarrett Krosoczka, who I should have asked if I'm getting his name right, but okay. All right. Thank you, Isaac and Jarrett, for being here, and welcome to all of you. I just want to say a few words about the bookshop. The Odyssey is open now 7 days a week, 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Monday through Saturday, 12 to 5 on Sunday. So welcome here, and we're open at night when we have events, and we have a lot of them. I just want to tell you about a couple coming up. Tomorrow night we're having a book club event where our 3 of our reps from Simon & Schuster, Penguin Random House, and HarperCollins are coming to talk to folks about things their book clubs might want to read. We're going to have some light refreshments. We're going to have giveaways, and it's going to be a great time. If you want to come, please register for that because I need to know how many people are coming, but we've got a good crowd coming already. Friday night, Jonathan Escoffrey will be with us on Zoom with Morgan Talty, talking about Jonathan's new book, If I Survive You, a major debut, blazing with style and heart that follows a Jamaican family striving for more in Miami and introduces a generational storyteller. Join us live and in person for a family event on Saturday, September 17th at 11 a.m. Rebecca Shear of the Circle Round podcast will join us to read 2 picture books from Circle Round, The Unwelcome Guest and A Taste of Honey. Her husband, Eric Shimalonis, will accompany her on sitar and oud, and we're very much looking forward to that. So if you or someone you know has littles, please come on down. And on Tuesday, September 20th at 7 p.m. on Zoom, Harrison Mooney will talk about his memoir, Invisible Boy, a memoir of self-discovery, an unforgettable coming-of-age memoir about a Black boy adopted into a white Christian fundamentalist family. For more information about these events, the books, and more, take a look at odysseybks.com, or we'll pass this around. Sign up. You can sign up for our newsletter if you're not already on it. Thanks, Jesse. Yeah. And Jesse also has our monthly calendar of events if you want to take one with you. Our guest author tonight is Isaac Fitzgerald. Isaac Fitzgerald appears frequently on the Today Show and is the author of the best-selling children's book, How to Be a Pirate, as well as the co-author of Pen and Ink and Knives and Ink, winner of an IACP award. His writing has appeared in the New York Times, The Guardian, The Best American Non-Required Reading, and numerous other publications. He lives in Brooklyn. His conversation partner is Jarrett J. Krosoczka. Jarrett Krosoczka, known since boyhood as JJK, is the New York Times best-selling author, illustrator, behind more than 40 books for young readers, including his wildly popular Lunch Lady graphic novels, select volumes of the Star Wars Jedi Academy books series, and Hey Kiddo, which was a National Book Award finalist. Krosoczka creates books with humor, heart, and deep respect for his young readers, qualities that have made his titles perennial favorites. on the bookshelves of homes, libraries, and bookstores over the past 20 years. Krosoczka lives in Western Massachusetts with his spouse, their 3 children, pugs Ralph and Frank, and a French bulldog named Bella Carmela. About Dirtbag, Massachusetts, Isaac Fitzgerald has lived many lives. He's been an altar boy, a bartender, a fat kid, a smuggler, a biker, a prince of New England. But before all that, he was a bomb that exploded his parents' lives, or so he was told. In Dirtbag, Massachusetts, Fitzgerald, with warmth and humor, recounts his ongoing search for forgiveness, a more far-reaching vision of masculinity, and a more expansive definition of family and self. So welcome, Isaac and JJK.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Welcome to the annual meeting of Fucked Up Childhoods in Massachusetts that have been put to the page.
If it was everyone, it'd be a much bigger room.
So Isaac and I are gonna chat, and we're gonna talk about these childhoods of ours.
Ooh, nice job.
Yeah, look at that.
That was strong.
We're gonna talk about writing memoir. We'll
Yeah.
take some of your questions, but I really wanted to get us in the right headspace. So since we're talking about our childhoods,
No.
got some Wonder Bread. Some fluff.
Oh my Lord.
I was gonna bring, but being that it's the Pioneer Valley, that's locally sourced pre-roam marshmallows and some Capri Suns.
Wow. You really nailed it.
Yeah. Apologies if anyone does have a marshmallow allergy. I did stay away from breaking peanut butter. That's
was
just
smart.
Yeah.
Not just
That's-
a hat rack.
It's not just
Not just a
rack,
handsome
no.
face. Wait, hang on. This is wild.
And I was hoping to stop at like Stop and Shop because that seems
Of
more central
course, of
Massachusetts.
course.
But did you have a big Y near you growing up?
For me, it was it was definitely a Stop and Shop, and it was a Stewart's. Do you
Oh,
remember
okay.
Stewart's?
Yes, but we didn't have it. I want to lead with Iandoli's.
Oh,
Any Iandoli's? No. You're like no.
now we're just aging.
No,
ourselves.
yeah, aging and super regional, but Shaw's
Oh yeah, I love a Shaw's.
Market Basket,
Oh, love a Market Basket.
Market
What about Star Market?
Star Market.
Star Market, huh? We all love a Star Market. You can hear me say my R's. We'll get into that in a second. It's not my fault.
Cheers.
Wait, hang on. Are we gonna make these right now while we do this?
I think we should make one for us, and then we could pass around should people feel comfortable in these weirdo times.
I like the idea of like dipping it like a chips and salsa situation, but like, no, I'm gonna actually do it.
Yeah,
right.
there you go. Nice.
This is the nicest.
This is ASMR. Fluffing out our-
So now I'm spreading the marshmallow on the bread.
This is gonna give you lots of cancer.
This is
Worth it.
I'm not joking. This is the most like thoughtful, like I've been on book tour for quite some time, but this is the closest to my home that I've done a book event. So thank you all so much for coming. And thank you so much for this incredibly nostalgic situation that I'm in right now.
I was concerned, like when I bought this stuff, that they were gonna make me sign a waiver at the store that I wouldn't sue them.
It's a beautiful, listen, it's a delicacy.
Now, when first of all, I should say Isaac was kind enough to bring Hey Kiddo on the Today Show after it was published. And then I read Dirtbag, Massachusetts, and I could see why he liked it because suddenly Hey Kiddo sounds like a Disney movie.
No, listen, there's no comparing our own messed up things. And I know you were probably holding back a little bit as well. But that was a heck of a book. I'm sorry.
Thank
if
you.
you haven't read Hey Kiddo, it's a fantastic graphic novel. And why I loved it so much, there were so many different reasons. But one, just the way that you captured what it's like to be a child in a lonely situation. And there's so many different ways to say that, right? You don't have to be
Right.
specific about what puts a lonely child in a lonely situation, but your capture of the things that you were going through, I thought was incredible and was a life's work, which it was kind of, right?
Yeah.
You've done like a bunch of, oh, see, I'm already turning it on you.
No,
All right, but you
no.
did a bunch of things beforehand.
And every year I thought I'm going to write a book about growing up. And
Did
then-
you?
Yeah. So my first book was published in 2001. It was a
Yeah.
picture book called Goodnight Monkey Boy. And I thought, oh, well, here's the happy ending for that kid who grew up with a mother addicted to heroin and a father who was absent and grandparents who were very loving, but alcoholics. But then every time I sat down to write the book, I would stop out of fear of, oh, what is this person going to think about when I'm writing about them? And so I realized I was not ready emotionally to write about this because I couldn't just choose different qualities of different people. I had to tell the whole story. And so I gave
So real quick,
Yeah.
first inserting question, but like you never thought about fictionalizing it.
No, because I thought part of the power would be, oh shit, like that person, this character, their
Mhm.
name is on the spine of the book.
Yeah.
So obviously that kid grew up to be sort of okay. You know, I will say when people ask me, can you give me any advice on writing memoir? What worked for me was outliving people. So
I'm sorry, that's the most New England answer I've ever heard.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so, like,
keep going.
eat
keep
healthy, exercise.
going. Don't smoke.
Don't let them be the one do the heroin. It'll eventually get them.
So you can outlive it.
And it did.
Oh no.
LOL.
I'm telling
it's
you,
a dark sense of humor when you grow up with a tough childhood in central Massachusetts.
It's true.
So, but tell me,
Mm.
you're like, no, like I don't want to.
No,
this is not. I gotta
Go
do
ahead,
it.
but I'm just for the record, this is like the second time we've seen each other.
In real
So,
life.
so I
Yeah.
do have like a lot of more questions, but sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah,
I won't hijack it.
No.
completely.
This is like going to be the most like ADD and now like full of fluffernutter conversation. Tell me about your emotional journey to put this book out, because you do a really wonderful and beautiful job of protecting the identity of your parents for people who don't look, like my last name is Krosoczka.
Right.
And I like, okay, like I was always afraid strangers are going to come and find these living people.
Right.
You did such a beautiful job of protecting their identity, even though you're revealing a lot of intense things. But I do have some family members that are alive, and I did have to have those difficult conversations with them. But I'm just really interested in knowing a little bit about your journey from, I think I want to share this story widely through literature.
Okay, so I've got like 3 responses. To
Okay,
that.
good, because I have a lot of
Get in. Chew it. I promise I'm gonna flip it on you now. All right. Well, one, there's this part of me that the easy joke to make is like, yes, you have a very unique name, but it's very long. So maybe people by like the first 7 letters just start blurring over.
I don't know how to
And they,
spell
but yeah, right, exactly. You can pay me $1 million right now. I tried. But the flip side of that, which was very nice, is that I have a very common last name, Fitzgeralds. We're basically the Smiths of Ireland, bunch of rabbits, had some fun. You get what I'm saying. In case there are any kids in the audience. So that allowed me in my own mind to be like, okay, as long as I keep it pretty vague, everybody knows a Fitzgerald. That said, the like real answer to that is you just said you knew you wanted to write your story. And you knew, and it was something you kind of kept putting off, but you knew you wanted to do it. I am the flip of that. If you met me in my 20s, I would have sworn to you, I'm never going to write about my childhood. It was this, I was like, I'll write about this, I'll write about that, but I'm never going to write about my childhood. There was like some weird, pride's not the right word, but there was just something in me that made me not want to look directly at it. And while I would tell you the whole story at a party, I would end it with, I'm never going to write about it. And it wasn't until basically I sold an essay collection to Bloomsbury. I had a book proposal, and it was supposed to all be about like pop culture through the lens of some of my personal experiences, but just a few. And I was very much like sat down to write it. And I'd be like, all right, well, to understand this, you have to understand my relationship with my father. And then like 7 people, I was like, I'll cut that later. And I'll get back to and basically after 1.5 years, almost 2 years of struggling with it, I called my editor up because I was late. turns out you have to write the book when you sell it. And I just said, hey, I'm sorry. I think I sold you a thing about pop culture. I actually think I'm supposed to write about my childhood. Like, I'm really sorry, but it's what keeps coming up. And she's like, yeah, I've been waiting about 18 months for you to figure that out. But so I had that flip experience of you. Now, the fact of the matter is that writing about family is very hard.
Mhm.
And like I just said, this is probably the closest I've been to home. This is the closest book event I've done to home. And I'm very, very lucky. Like, I just want to acknowledge that really quickly. Wow, this is a very complicated book, and my relationship with my family, many of whom are actually still living.
Mhm.
They have been so loving and so supportive. And I always want to take a little bit of a moment. It doesn't give anything away to start at the end in a weird way. There's no spoiler here to just say that this is not a book that ends with a ribbon. There's no, and this is the lesson we all learned. Part of the end, I wanted it to feel messy. I wanted it to feel ongoing, because the conversations that are happening between not just myself and other people in the family, but within the family, are all still ongoing. And I'm very happy to report, because it's not a spoiler, because it's not in the book, that those conversations that have happened since the book have come out are some of the best conversations we've ever had. And so that was a real gamble. And in some ways, one could look at it, especially a New England way to look at it, I would say, is like, it was a really selfish act for me to write that book. There is a lot of risk, especially with so many people living. But I'm very lucky in that most of my family have all sorts of different backgrounds themselves, but what they do love is books. And so I think they were very interested in the process of what happened, how it happened, and then just being like, okay, well, this is not a joke. This is a real thing that happened. I'm not going to say which family member, but they're like, well, we thought it was going to be like read by 2 people, and like you got like $100 for it. But a New York Times bestseller, and it's almost like because of that success,
That is so New England.
They're like, oh, well, it's hot.
I guess I always said, yeah,
It's doing
too
okay.
rich for my blood.
Anyway, it's part of an ongoing conversation, but I do want to flip it back to you for a second, which is like those living members that were around. Like, how did it feel to put? Because again, there is that temptation to just fictionalize it.
There is, yeah. So I have enough friends who have written memoir those memoirs have kind of destroyed family relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not even memoirs that are super dramatic, but I think it ruins some relationships because it put those family members into a spotlight that they didn't necessarily ask for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I had every family member that's living, I had them read the script. And one to say, so for graphic novels, I write out a script, like one would have a script for like a movie or a stage play before I draw the pictures. So that was their chance to say, either that's not how I remember it,
Mm-hmm.
or you get this fact wrong, because some of it takes place when I'm very, very young. But then also top line, do you want me to fictionalize your name or not?
Mm-hmm.
Despite the fact that your last name might be Krosoczka as well. And every Krosoczka family member who read it were like, wow, that was spot on. That's exactly how it was. Yes, please put my name in it. But now I also have to tend to my birth father.
Mm-hmm.
And based on the fact that, if you haven't read the book, just based on the fact that I preface the word father with birth, so it's a very complicated relationship. And he was pretty unsure, and I said, well, look, about using his name. I was like, let me just send it to you. And I really empathized with him. And I said on the phone, I was like, look, don't take this the wrong way, what I'm about to say. But if I was in your position, I'd be nervous too. Like, if I abandoned this kid before birth and didn't come into that kid's life until he was 17, and that kid grew up to be a published author with an audience, and if that kid then grew up and then called me and said, I'm writing a book about my childhood, I said, I'd be nervous too. And I said, don't take this the wrong way, but you're not in it that much, because it's about my childhood. And it's like, and it was sort of this awkward, like, and so I sent him a copy. He hadn't read it, but here's where it gets complicated. So my father and my younger half brother have the same first name, and that becomes a plot point. So if I changed my father's name for the book, I'd have to change my little brother's name. He really wanted his name in the book. So he basically, that Thanksgiving, he went home. Like, we don't do Thanksgiving together, but he went home and said, basically, like, don't be such a wussy, Dad. Like, just step up to it, you know. And
Wow.
And so, but I was still nervous. So this will lead into my next question for you, is that we learn from other people who've walked this path before us. So Gina, my wife, and I went to go see David Sedaris speak at the Academy of Music while I was writing the book. And afterwards, the house lights come up and people can ask questions. And I'm so used to, presenting at schools where I'm the person selecting the kid to ask the question. And suddenly I'm in the audience. And I was so nervous to raise my hand and ask a question. And he called it.
It's good for you to remember.
Yes,
As you're out there doing all those at schools, 1,000 people it's good for you to, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. That's good.
And I said, what does your family make of this? And he said, well, I don't give away their secrets. And I went, wow. And I was like, what are their secrets? and
if this is the non-secretive
this
stuff.
is the non-secretive stuff. And so, but I got it. Like, okay, like there are parts that my family members have lived that I'm tangential to, that I'm like, that's their story, that story. So we drove home, and it was gnawing at me that I wanted to ask him more questions. So we drove home. Gina alleviated the babysitter. I went back and I was the last person in line. And I told him the story.
I'm so sorry. I thought you meant your birth father there for a second. But what you're saying is you drove home, you dropped your wife off, and you drove back to the David Sedaris event.
Yes.
To get in the back of the line after asking the audience questions.
Yes. And I just like get some one-on-one time, right?
God bless.
And I told him the story. And in the most David Sedaris way, he signed the book. And I was like, I'm worried about writing about my father and this experience because I don't want to hurt him, despite the, a difficult relationship.
I'm so sorry. What year is this?
This is 2000.
More.
This is 2017.
Oh, so this is recent.
This is like, I'm writing the book.
Yeah.
And he leaned back and he's like, here's the thing. If you live your life like you're an asshole, you're going to be written about like you're an asshole. So just go home and write the damn book. And then the next time I saw David Sedaris was at the book signing a couple years later with like that silver National Book Award sticker.
Yeah.
And he told me he remembered. He probably doesn't. But that was like such that little.
No, don't skip over that. What'd you say? Did you say to him, you told me to write the?
Oh yeah, no, he loved it. He took the book,
and said, I remember that as clear as day.
Clear as day, exactly. But there must have been some authors in your life. I mean, I just learned that for several years, you were your backyard abutted the backyard of John Sheska.
Oh yeah. Is he a buddy of yours?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Hang on. So that's a great story. I'm going to say two things because what you just touched on is something that's so important to me, which is and I just want to say something. It's incredible that you gave family members the script. Like that's doing really due diligence.
Yeah. And like legally you don't have to.
No. Oh, I know because my family. Real big believer in ask for forgiveness later. No, I think that's I think you should feel really, really good about that. And the fact that you gave those options. But am I right in saying that your birth father then did say, hey, it's
so what happened was he read it and he was really touched by how I handled it.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, my editor's like, we are going to print in like 2 days. We need to know if he's going to use his real name or not. And so I said to my father, he called me and said, I want to use my real name. And I'm like, well, just, like, I have no idea what the future holds, but whatever name you choose for this book, if I go to write future memoir, would stick with that. So and he goes, no, like, then he got really angry with me because he's like, I want my real name in it. Like, I'm proud to be your father. And if I didn't have my real name in it, people who know me would think maybe I was trying to hide something. And that was really, and I just say,
wait,
well, hold on. He also voiced himself in the audio.
What?
Yeah. So the audiobook is a full cast. And when it came time to casting the living people who are very opinionated from central Massachusetts, I was like, why don't we just get the real people, which then led to my father coming in to record his parts. Yeah. Which included like the letter he wrote me when I was 16 saying, I'm sorry, I wasn't there for you. Yeah. Yeah.
Like did the audiobook happen after the national, like?
Yeah, the audiobook was a whole year later.
Because it's a graphic novel.
It's a graphic novel and audiobook.
But they do a great job with that stuff now.
Yeah, in 2018, like there really wasn't. So I think Hey Kiddo was like the second ever audiobook of a graphic novel. Yeah.
And you were like, we're calling in the family.
We're
All
calling
right,
in the
that's
family.
incredible. Okay,
Yeah.
so I got a few things to touch on this. One, it is about, like you said, different people's memories.
Right.
Because we all experience things so differently. So God bless you. You're a saint. You sent the script. I did not. But what I did do the second I knew it was finished is I knew I didn't want to, basically hit anybody out of nowhere.
Hmm.
And the second part of that, I just want to say is this is something I've been planning to do my whole life. And I made it very clear to my family from the age of like 23, everything we talked about before. I was just like, Fitzgerald's a very common name. So like, let's just distance ourselves. It's okay. You can distance your, like, just pretend I'm a nephew. Like someday I'm going to write something, da, 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 da. And they're like, yeah, sure. And then I did. So I sent it to my parents. And I said to them, you don't have to read this. Because I was estranged from my parents for about 10 years. And then we came back into each other's lives. And that's been an incredible and very personal thing. And this book is very much not about that. And so I said, look, this is something based on a long time ago. If you want to read it, you can. If you don't want to read it, that's a-okay. But one thing my parents gave me was a real love of books. Like I said, real love of literature. We're in a bookstore in Central. Like books, education, it's very important. It's especially very important in the state, in this area. There's so many colleges. So I was very unsurprised when my mom read it in a night. And she wrote me the next day. And that was the beginning of these conversations that started to happen that have been so important. But one of the things she just said was, like, right out of the bat, like she was just like, hey, can you get on the phone? I was like, yep. She's like, where are all the canoe trips? Where's the camping? And I got it immediately. Like, she was like, look, you're highlighting these very, very rough moments. Where's some some of those nicer moments? And I will say, just like it's like I know you did, because like in your graphic novel, like we are trying to treat even the people that wronged us with care.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that I accomplished that in this book too, but that's not like when you're a parent, of course, it's going to be very hard. It's a line from the book. How would you feel if somebody took the worst things you did 30 years ago and put them in a book? Of course it was hurt. And so I responded, I said, look, Mom, here's the truth. The truth is like a block of wood. It's like a log. That's the whole truth. That's the canoeing trips. That's everything. I get out of that block of wood, you would carve a much different sculpture than the one that I've carved in this book. And that would be your sculpture. That would be the way that you would look at that time. This is the sculpture that I carved. And I hope you can accept that. The other thing that became very clear to me in that moment, especially now that I'm basically the age that my parents were while this was all happening, is that when you're older, the years pass so much more quickly. So to my parents, those were a rough few years. And actually, there's a story in that they are still together. They got past it. And that's incredible. But to an 8-year-old, that's half your life. That noise sounds so much louder. That hardship feels so much harder, and it weighs you down so much. It's such a bigger burden because of the different time scale, basically. Second I said that to my mom, I'm so lucky in that instead of like reacting with anger or like this or that, she accepted it. And she was like, I don't care about what, she's like, I get it, you made your thing. She didn't say I don't care, she cares. But she's like, what I'm interested in our relationship now. And so that's been a really beautiful thing. Yeah.
Did you must have had friends that you would lean on though, when you were trying to get this on paper. Did you write a lot of this during COVID lockdown?
Yeah. Oh no, there's a lot here. One, friends' reactions have just been wonderful. Just like have some fun with that, because that was all very heavy what I just said. We can get to some more lighter stuff, which is like my one friend that texted me. Basically, he was just like, I hadn't heard him in like 10 years. He's like, I asked our buddy Liam, it's a mutual friend, sorry, Connor in the book. Gave that away now.
I'm always so afraid of that too.
I was like, whoops. But he's like, whatever, we're all friends here. He's like, I ask Liam all the time. I'm like, oh, what's going on with Isaac? What's going on with Isaac? And he was like, oh, I think he like lives on an island in New Hampshire now. I don't know. And then like, he's like, 4 years later, what's going on with Isaac? He's like, I think he's like sleeping on a couch in San Francisco. I don't know. He's like, oh, what's going on with Isaac? 4 years later, he's like, I think he's like the world's worst sushi chef somewhere. And then he was like, and then I just texted him, what's going on with Isaac? And then he was like, and there's a book. And he's like, I just want you to know, I picked it up. I read it. I loved it. And that has been like the most, like, family is so important. And it's such like a tightrope to walk. But the friends' reactions, especially the friends that grew up here in the Valley and grew up in North Central Massachusetts and the areas that I write about, their reaction to us, they were just like, you nailed, like, and I'm not, it's not just my childhood, right? It was all, they were just like, you captured,
like that's,
and that was so,
that's what it felt like to leave the theater after Fight Club.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
exactly.
Beating on your friends and you're like, that wasn't the point, dude. but I mean like support to get you through the emotional process of writing it though too, like, because it's a head trip. Like it's not easy to write memoir at all. It's really difficult.
No, I mean, to your point, so to get to kind of what you're saying, like I have a lot of authors who've been so supportive, and it's been really.
But you're like backstage, you're like, hey, Hoda, before we go up to recommend books, can I just
pick your brain real quick?
Jenna Hoda, come here. I just need a little.
No. Those women are busy. They don't have. I will say this: that Today Show, like that moment was
when she interviewed you was fantastic.
When she hugged me.
Yes.
I called it the Hoda hug. I think that's the only reason the book was a success. She really, there's a reason that woman's very good at her job. That's all I'm gonna say. She's very good at her job. No, there have been so many authors that have inspired me. To get back to your original question, like, so I worked on a website when I lived in San Francisco. We published Roxane Gay before she published Bad Feminist. A lot of the essays in Bad Feminist were done on that website. I helped. And when I say edit, I mean, like I put a comma.
You connected on the AOL modem.
Yeah.
So like
basically, I put that stuff in the CMS. I did like HTML. I like linked things to things. That's what I mean. And then another wonderful, like before Wilds came out, it was Cheryl Strayed, and she had this advice column, Dear Sugar. And I edited that, by which again, I mean like she sent it on a Thursday. I hadn't cried in 10 years. I'd read it, I'd cry for like a week. Like, I'm sorry, for like every week for like a year. Thursday was just like, oh, here's Cheryl. Do it, read, cry, take her name off of it, put it online. And then Wild came out. It was like amazing. Like I became friends with Cy Jones through that. His memoir, How We Fight for Our Lives, was based on an essay that he worked on with me, which I did maybe a little bit more than move a comma or two on that one, but like we had such a close friendship, and it was called How Men Fight for Their Lives originally. We published that. So I had this front row seat to all these people that were brave enough to share their stories. Again, the whole time I was being like, oh, I'll never write about my childhood.
Even then.
Oh, even then.
You're like, let me lead with a pirate picture book. Was that your mom like,
good
hey,
plug?
Like that was a good like, hey mom, first read this picture book about pirates. Oh, and by the way, there's also this.
JJ, you're so good at this. No, that's man. Like, there's 3 different stories coming out of this. One, how to be a pirate. yeah, that was part of that was when my mom was the proudest. Because I'd come back, we weren't estranged anymore. And she was like, look at my son, the children's book author. I was like, oh, the next one though, nephew, at least. Like, come on, I'd like call her, I'd be like, I don't know. She was
She was probably posting that LeVar Burton reading your book
oh
on her
yeah,
Facebook.
no, she was so proud. And to be honest, I do think she's proud of this. But so How to Be a Pirate comes from a really wonderful place. I just want to tell that story.
Please do, yeah.
John Sheska, who we have in common. Also, by the way, we could talk like all night, so sorry about that. I moved to New York City from San Francisco. This is part of what, to tie it into the conversation we're having, brings my family kind of back together, is my half brother, who is my mother's child, and my half sister, who is my father's child. And just, this is the first line of the book, so it's definitely not a spoiler. My parents were married when they had me, just to different people. So these were both my older siblings. I remember being a kid and hearing the phrase half brother and half sister, and I just loved it for some reason, because it was two, like, even though it said half, it was two words. It really made it feel like it was a more important thing. Like they had a title. They weren't just a brother, they were half brother. Anyhow, they started to have kids, and I was 3,000 miles away in San Francisco, and I knew I was going to be the weird uncle. So I didn't want to be the weird uncle that was 3,000 miles away. So I came back, lived in New York, started to rebuild my relationship, not just with my siblings, but with my parents, because I knew it was going to be important for us all to be able to spend time as a family. And like, spoiler alert, my parents, maybe not the hottest parents, but they were incredible educators at the time. But more importantly, now they are the world's best grandparents. Like truly, like no offense to the other grandparents.
Yeah.
Top notch. Anyhow, I moved to New York City. The place I stay, there's a backyard. I'm not talking later, like further down the block. I'm not talking another block. I'm talking backyard on backyard action. Just kissing. I'm in my backyard. There's an older gentleman over here. I'm drinking a little rosé. He's drinking a little rosé. We get to talking through the fence. like what's that, Tool Time? What's that?
Home
Like,
improvement.
yeah. We're just chatting. He invites me around to his, no problem. I had no idea who he was. He had no idea who, like nobody. Anyways, his name was John Shez. I knew who he was by the second I got in his house, because he had a whole library that was just children's books.
By John Cheska. Like,
Yeah.
this is either this guy is a stalker or it's him.
Well, but here's the other. It's like, I mean, no offense to yourself, with your last name, I didn't know how to pronounce Sheska. I just read it as a kid. John, sure.
All of those letters. Yes, all of those letters.
You know, like same,
Yeah.
like
Same Polish
same
last name,
for
yeah.
you. Yeah. Anyways, it dawned on me. I figured out who it was, and I was like, oh.
And you grew up with this book.
I was the right age. I'm born in
Yeah.
1983. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I'm like Fairly Rotten Fairy Tales. Like, oh, that is my stuff. For those of you, if you're like, who is John Shet? Like, just go look
I
it
think
up.
like just go.
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Actually, yeah. No, you
I
can
thought like just go.
just buy the books downstairs. No, come on, the young ones might not know. There's downstairs. I mean, there's an incredible, like the Three Little Pigs tale, like throat.
The Sticky Cheese Man.
Yeah, but told through the view of the wolf.
Oh, the absolutely true story of this.
Yeah,
the
no,
true story-
it's
true
a-
story of the.
It's the Stinky Cheese Man and Other Fairly Rotten Fairy Tales. And yeah,
The true story of the Three Little Pigs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you nailed it.
Yeah.
Anyways, and he's got 100 other ones. Incredible middle grade, incredible everything. But anyways, my heart's beating fast.
Yeah.
And in my head, I was like, oh, I have a kid's book idea. Because I'd had a kid's book idea since my like mid-20s, because all my friends started having kids. And they're like, they call it, like the little kids would call me the inked man, or like the stamped man. And they're just, I was like, oh, I want to do a book that explains what tattoos are to children, because that's a brilliant idea. But I'm like, you can't just walk up to John Sheska and like, oh, I'm in your house. By the way, I was like, he gets that all
This
the
was all a
time.
plot.
Yeah, exactly.
I said to my real estate
I
agent,
moved into
get me
this
a place
place
near John
Yeah.
Cheska.
just so we could drink rosé
Yeah.
together. Anyways, I'm sorry, I'm telling a very long story, but it's Massachusetts, so that's what we do. I hang out with him like 30 more times because I just want to be respectful.
Yeah.
And then eventually I like come around, I'm like, hey, I got a kid's book idea. He's like, cool, let's hear it. There's a whole other story, by the way, like another, anyways. He's just like, cool, let's hear it. And I basically say what I just said to you all, which is to say I didn't have much of an idea. I just was like, kids books, tattoos, eh?
And then the dum, 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 cut to the next scene.
Yeah,
of
let's
your
do it.
sitcom.
Yeah, and what he said was, that's not a kid's book idea. And like my heart fell. And in that moment, I was like, I've overstepped.
Sure.
This is what he gets all the time. He thought I was
Every day.
I was the fun
Every day.
I was the fun backyard rosé guy. And now I've ruined it. But luckily 0.5 seconds later, what comes out of his mouth is, hey, if you want to come over here every other Friday for the rest of the summer, I'll teach you how to turn your kind of bad idea into a book that kids might actually want to read and connect with.
Wow.
And that was like something you couldn't pay for.
No.
And he did that. Like, I'm not joking. Like, it was some Karate Kid level. Like, then I came over on a Friday and all his kids' books were down out of the library on couches, on coffee tables, on the floor, just stacked. And he was like, I'm going to drink in the backyard. Why don't you read every single one of these books?
And then
it was
alphabetized.
yeah, right. Like, hey, dust the whole house.
Yeah.
Listen. But truly, over the course of that, that's how to be. There wasn't pirates involved with it. If you're unfamiliar with the book, just pick it up. You'll figure it out. But like truly, in my book, it was like a dad's getting ready for the bath, and he takes his shirt off, and there are tattoos. I don't know. And like he like really was like, there needs to be the art of the turn, which I'm sure you know about. There needs to be a child for the child who's reading it to connect with. It became this huge long thing. Anyways, that's a very long answer for like, I shocked the success of a lot of the things that I've done, up to 3 things. One of them's community. We can get into that more in a little bit, but like just touching on the others.
Yeah.
But the other one is just real luck. And that was just like, that was a once in a lifetime experience. And then he is still my friend to this day. And I'm sure you have felt that same level of support from him. Like, he is just a wild man who loves other people, who invents stories.
An incredibly caring human.
Yeah. How'd you meet him?
Um,
If you say Rosé Backyard, I'm gonna be real.
yeah, I had just I was there right before you.
Nah!
I get all everything I need to publish my books. I'm out of here. That's why he was like, ah, Christ, not another one. Another masshole one for the children's book idea. Okay, it was when I got started in the early O's, one of my first big educators conference, I met him and I was so starstruck. And I didn't grow up with his books, but I worshiped them. In college, I would go to the bookstore on Thayer Street. I went to Rhode Island School of Design and Providence. So on Thayer Street, there was this bookstore. I'd go to the children's book section, and it was all of those books we mentioned. And I took a picture with him because I was just so geeked out. And he said the nicest thing, where he's like, oh no, like you're published, like we're the same. And I'm like, no, we're not, like Francesca. And he's just someone that I'd always see at book festivals or conferences. And he's he's a nurturer of talent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just like a lover of people who.
And funny.
Yeah.
As funny in person as he is on the page.
But better.
Yeah. Well, because he
there's no editor.
There's no censor.
That's absolutely right.
But that's, I mean, like every generation, like is, like we are able to do what we do because of the people we look up to and the people that we seek out and the people who are generous of their time and knowledge and generous with their caring enough to send you in the right direction.
Or even just the people that we read.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
To bring it back to like my parents being like, again, I got into writing at kind of a late age. I didn't know it was a job you could still do. I just thought like I grew up loving books, but it was, let's be honest, just like a bunch of older white people, most of them dead, is how I like was raised.
And not from Central Massachusetts.
No. Like, yeah, no. I mean, listen, we had our things, right? Massachusetts, we had like
Robert
Scarlet Letter.
Robert
First. Walt Whitman, like loved it, and still love him. I'm not knocking Walt. Like, Great Pond, big fan. But I was not aware of contemporary stories.
Yeah.
I was not aware of stories that could like reflect mine or reflect like the neighborhood that I grew up in, Boston. And that is something that came later in life. And it's just through reading those people that like you start to see your own path forward, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so that was one of the experience, like again, that was one of the gifts that my parents gave me were those books. And like, not to like, this is not the best example of like one of the stunning people I was reading, but I'll say this, my father read the book too. I told you my mother got back in touch, and there's the block story.
Yeah.
My father wrote a very dry and humorous email, which I can't share all of with you, but it was really good. He's smart. But one of the lines was very much like, shouldn't have given you so much Bukowski at such a young age. And I was like, you're not wrong. Sorry.
No. I love the reactions that your friends had. Were people in your orbit of growing up? I mean, I know you talked about how your parents, but like those friends, like, did they know you were working on this?
Great question.
Because I like when my publisher announced it,
Mhm.
and then I wrote it on Facebook, like, hey, this, and that's another thing. I was like, I wanted to make sure these people knew about it before it was announced. But then there were some people who would comment like about them being in it, and I was like, you're really kind of overestimating. Like we kind of sat.
It was just one night by the lake.
We sat near each other in English class for 4 years, but it's, you know, like, so, but did you have any friends that are like, I don't know, reaching out to you, concerned, excited, where you're like, I guess I have to put that person in the book now? I hadn't planned on putting them in the book.
No, again, I think I did. I kept my, like, it's something I admire about the experience that you're talking about, is like, I did keep my cards close to my chest. So I don't think a lot of people knew before it came out. And then, and just for the record, in that case, I changed a lot of names. I did not.
Yeah.
I really, I can't even show the name here. Let's just say it was that's like just a quick side story, is how sad that was for me, because the names that I had were so good. And I'm not a fiction writer. So they got changed to like Connor McSmith. And I mean, I can give his. He's my best friend. He loves the book. He's been his real name is Liam Patrick Walsh. Oh, like that's real and so Irish. And I changed it to Connor, like whatever it was. The other one is like, I went to a boarding school, and the names that were out of there were so good. And I love them. I love these people. Like they're amazing. But like, again, it was either I have to go check in with 20 people,
right,
so I can use the name. All right, I'm just gonna say this way. There's nothing linked to it. But like Blake Pickett is a good name. That's a good. You can't invent Blake Pickett as a maybe bully that comes around eventually. What? No, and I would say, but like, come on. And so there were like certain names, like and then I just had to be like Bobby. So I didn't have the road that you traveled, which is sharing it with people, which I think is very admirable. But what I do have now are people reading it and it kind of expressing to me that they feel like I gave voice to their story in a way that they didn't understand. And then also the nice thing about changing names, to your point of the person that's sitting next to you in English class, is that somebody's like, that me? And I'm like, yep. But no, I mean, that again, it gets back to that, like, this is what a story is. Like, some people in this book, like, absolutely, it's a memoir, right? But like, I'm not an investigative journalist. It's not
an autobiography.
It's not on me.
There's a big difference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like, of course, there is going to be people who I'm going to like, just, you know, again, sticking to the truth of it, sticking to the truth of what happened, but like that I change a little bit just to protect, really in a way, just to protect them.
Yeah.
There's one character in the boarding school essay who, whatever, you'll read it and you'll get into it and you'll figure it out. But that's the person that people ask about the most. How to put it?
It's tricky when you're like, it's also tricky when you're like, what did I name this
Oh,
person?
what-
Because
what-
there are some people I did change their names.
Yeah.
And I'm always so afraid I'm gonna say their real name.
I'm just gonna say a gentleman who had a unique autonomy. Anatomy? Anatomy?
Anatomy.
There we go. Anyways.
He had a very
that-
unique way of being on his own.
That's right.
He didn't go to a boarding school.
But that's somebody that people ask after, like, oh, is that kid okay? And I just want to say, you'll read it, you'll figure it. But like,
Yeah.
he's like, not only his life is wonderful, he's married, he's very happy. So like that would be somebody that I like actually tried to get in contact with.
Oh, for me, there are definitely some. Do you remember? Did you watch 30 Rock?
Yeah.
Okay, there's this. I'll never forget the episode where Liz Lemon goes back to her high school reunion,
Yes.
and she's ready to confront all the bullies, only to learn that she, as like
Yes.
a nerdy kid, had been the bully.
Yes.
So there's a part of me that was like thinking of that when I was writing a scene in which I was bullied. And then I looked them up on Facebook and I was like, screw these guys. I'm gonna bring them. Like, they're still jerks.
Yeah. You're like, no,
No,
I read
I
that.
was right.
I
I read the room right.
I read that correctly. No, but that's part of the point of this essay collection for me is I never wanted to make myself look good in it either. Like, this is not a story of like, look at the hardships that I've overcome. Like, no, life is hard. Everybody, like, again, just a line from the book, but it's like we all have our difficult moments. Like, to compare flames of difficulties to one another, it's like there's no point in that. Everyone's had a hard life in their own way.
Yeah.
And so I'm very wary of like, well, I've had it worse than you've had, or anything like that. Like, I want at the core of this book, like I said, you know, like there's community, there's finding home, but also just like not forgiveness in a way that I think I had a sense of it as a kid, which was just like, oh, I forgive you, and now we can move on. Oh, let's put this as far in the rearview mirror as we can, and then we can move on. Real forgiveness comes from really difficult conversations, from acknowledging the wrongs that have been done to one another, and basically being like, hey, do you still want to be in each other's lives? It was important to me in these essays to never portray myself as like, but I'm great, for many different reasons, but the most is that that's a boring essay. Like, that's not a good story. Like, something that interests us about other people is the ways in which we fail, the ways in which we've messed up. And that's why, you know, I didn't call it like a memoir and essays or an essay collection. Like, I called it a confessional because I really wanted it to feel like while you're reading it was like, I'm not following Stuart Little, God bless him, great mouse, love him. But he's like really overcoming a lot of difficulties. Like, this to me, I really wanted it to be more like, oh, we're watching a kid who, because of the stuff that he was affected with, it keeps hurting other people. Because that's what happens with this. It's not, oh, this bad stuff happens to me, but because I'm a goddamn golden saint, I triumph over it. What happens is bad stuff happens to you, and then you, thinking that you're doing the right thing or thinking that you're getting away from the thing, actually end up hurting a lot of other people in your like self-centered attempt to escape it. So that was like, again, I feel like we're cracking jokes and then I'm bringing it down.
No, oh, I can bring it way down.
Yeah, but
I
that was such an important part of it to me, because I really do think those essays, like I wrote one recently, it's not in the book, but was about my decision to never have children and how much I love being an uncle. And like, you read that as like, it's a lot of, don't get me wrong, it's fun, it's funny, it's light, it's like me with kids, ha ha ha. But then like kind of towards the end, like, I realized that there was this moment where I'm hanging out with my niece and my nephew, and while I'm writing the piece, like I'm looking at the whole thing, and I'm like, I need to admit that in this one moment, I had this feeling, which was to hit them, and I didn't. And I saw you laugh, and I want to be. That's okay. That's okay to laugh, because that's what every parent has told me. They're like, yeah, we do too, all the time. You just don't if you're doing it okay. And if you do, like, you know, there's all these different very difficult things to untangle there. But in the way that I carried it, I was like, this is going to change this essay so completely if I put that in there. But the only way this essay doesn't read like a puff piece that is so clearly written to try and support this book for Esquire the week before it comes out is if I actually admit that and acknowledge the fact that like being around kids, especially when they're like, throw a rock through a window from the inside. Where'd you get the rock? I don't know. Or like they don't share, like that's just part of it. Anyway, sorry.
No. This is what this is all about.
Yeah.
One thing that I do, so since you were joking and you apologize for bringing it down, I'll bring it down some more.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really sort of mourned when I finished the book was I felt like I lost people again. Because these people in my life who had died, I had spent all this time with them on the page. And there is something beautiful and powerful about being like remembered and people sharing your stories. And I was especially taken by the story you shared about your time in San Francisco at the bar. And so what was that like for you to be able to share some of those stories of that found family in San Francisco? But you said there was a wall of photographs, right?
Yeah. No, I can talk. All right, so hang on, because we will open up to questions there in a second. Yeah. But I'm sorry, I'm going to use one of my Uno reverse cards. Uno, we love Uno, which is, can you talk a little bit about like who was one of the people that you missed the most, or like what? Well,
my grandfather, like my grandmother too, but my grandfather especially, because he was the rock, he was the steady hand. My mother, some in that mostly mourning the potential she had. She could have been as a mother and as a grandmother, but especially drawing these pictures, especially drawing my grandfather. And I just finished a book called Sunshine, which is a follow-up to Hey Kiddo, and that's about me working at a camp for kids with cancer. So thinking of some of the kids I used to take care of who aren't here anymore. But it's like you're giving their memory power by sharing them even in a conversation, let alone in a book.
No, I think that's one, that's absolutely right. 2, Sunshine comes out in spring of next year. I got you. But 3, like even like to move it past death for even a moment, but like I think that's one of the conversations I'm having with my parents right now around the book, is like they're like, this is really hard. And I really tried. 1, I tried to treat them with grace. I hope I did that in the book, but 2, I really tried to make them anonymous. Yeah. Like we didn't even get into where the title comes from. I'm happy to answer that in a little bit, but like I didn't make them anonymous enough. Like I know they've had people reach out. Sure. And not all of it has been nice. Yeah. And that's really hard. Yeah. It feels incredible. Like that's something I kind of have to live with the way they live with it, which again is just so admirable.
So look for the sequel, Fun with Canoes.
Camping trips. Yeah. 83 to 89. No.
Why is this book only 45 pages?
So many beautiful pictures though. Lots of loons. No, but like
birds too.
One of the ways they make peace is that they're like, okay, maybe this isn't the story we tell, but we hope it's helping other people. Like, we hope this book is having the conversations, the hard conversations that we're now having in this family. We hope that it's actually helping other people achieve that. And I think that's just such a brilliant way to look at it. Just to like, kind of what you're saying, like the memory of what could be, but also like you get to share that story that is maybe helping somebody else.
Not maybe, it is.
Yeah, it is.
It is. There's some young person out there or grown person who sees their story reflected, and you're like, oh, I'm not this island of having this unique experience.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But to answer the question about, I worked at a bar where there's a bunch of beautiful photos on the wall, and they're all framed, and those are everybody that's died. And especially at some of my lower moments in my life, I couldn't wait to get up on that wall. Because I think there's something about, it's easier to be a memory than to be alive. It's easier to be somebody that people love and cheer for than to be the complicated person that we are as we exist. And there's one person who I write about who I love and who I miss to this day. And again, this is another one of those moments where this is somebody that, especially towards the end for them, I was not the friend that I could have been. And I wasn't there to support them in the way that I could have been. And when I finished that piece, it really did almost feel like this kind of send off.
Yeah.
And kind of what you're saying, like, oh, how do I have to let this person
Like a
go
really
on the
long
page?
exhale, like, okay,
Yeah.
got it.
But then also, am I losing them? Like now,
Are you losing them
now,
again?
yeah. Now does that mean I won't remember them as much as
Yeah.
But what happened, and I'm sure you've experienced a little bit of this too, especially when you're like, then other people, sometimes people I didn't even know start reaching out to me because I use their real name in it, to say, oh, here's a memory.
That's
oh,
beautiful.
did you know this?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, he used to say this about you. Not all of it good. But like all of a sudden, like, and I'm sure when you're like, oh, did you know this about, like, like you were saying, when you were going through to people, you're talking to people about your memories versus their memories, even if it's not what's aligning with what's in the book, you get to hear these other stories. And that's the beautiful thing about, like, not to, like, now I am putting a bow on this in the way that I did on the book, but like, that's what stories do. Stories beget stories. Mm-hmm. And they cause us to, like, share more. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about your graphic novel. Again, I do want to say this, and I'm not BSing you in any way. Like, reading your book, I was working on this, and it was part of what made me feel like, hey, holy smokes, this is so much closer to home than anything I'd read in a very long time. And it made me feel the courage to maybe put some of that on the page. So, well, it's just the truth. I really appreciate it. So again, let's give it up for JJ.
Thank you. Hey, when is
say canoe book?
when is your canoe? When is your birthday? I meant to look it up.
What's your son? Oh no, that's not what I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, my bad. February.
Okay, so so
wait, what? Oh no.
You guys, I mean, we either just missed it or early. You guys are gonna sing?
What are we doing right now?
Well, if you used your context clues, it's something to do with a birthday.
Yeah, all right. I still have the Fluffernutter. Also, he never told me his sign. Just for the record, nor his birthday.
Okay, ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Isaac. Happy birthday.
Oh my
You
God.
said you never got a
I've never gotten a Carvel cake in my life.
There you go.
Oh my God. I'm not joking. I loved ice cream cakes as a kid, but I'd never had one. I just thought, come on, cake? Delicious. Ice cream?
Who remembers the Carvel commercials? Right. Here, come on down to Fudgy the Whale at Carvel. And then at Christmas time, they would just take the mold and turn it that way, and they'd be like, it's a Santa Claus.
I'm not joking. I kind of thought that's what was coming out at first.
Santa Claus?
Yeah, well, no. But no, I have never in my life, like, I mean, I've had ice cream cake now. It wasn't a destitute 39 yet. I figured it out eventually that I could buy my own. But I've never had a Carvel ice cream cake, let alone a Carvel chocolate. What's it called officially? Chocolate whale?
Fudgy the Whale.
Fudgy the Whale. I apologize. Fudgy the Whale. And I wanted these so bad as a kid. Oh my gosh. What?
It's from the Krosoczka house. That's how
Everyone do an event with JJK. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, give it one more time. Come on.
So now
a Fluffernutter.
Now you can enjoy the cake you never got as a kid.
Yes.
While you take questions.
And the Fluffernutter that I feel like I hope everyone can share. But yes, I will any Don't be intimidated by the desserts. The fact that I'm basically getting diabetes up here. Not just a what'd you have for dinner, Isaac? A fluffernutter with whatever. I'm eating this. I'm not gonna ruin it. Do you see the shame coming in? No, I'm eating this tail.
Make a wish.
I'm eating this tail right now.
There you go.
No, that's a lot.
Oh, you can do it.
Hang on,
Do you have your EpiPen?
I don't want to mess up the bookstore. All right, but go ahead. Questions. I'm ready. Go ahead.
Did writing this in the form of essays instead of, say, narrative art, and blah, 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 did that have to do with economy scale or something?
Yeah, no, it's a great question for those. If you didn't hear it, it's basically like why essays instead of a memoir, and I think that gets.
If anybody would like to have a piece, yeah. Are you sharing?
No. Yes.
Oh.
Listen, 8-year-old me, another story. But no, there's the fluffernutter
Feel
too.
free. We got a few extra Capri Suns up there.
Just for the record, I know you know John Cheska because this is very John Cheska-esque. Truly, it's like a kindergarten party up here. All right. I wish I could tell you something about there's pieces of truth in what I'm about to say, which is like Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay was incredibly inspiring to me. So there was something there.
Is that essays?
Yeah, it's a collection of essays. Yep, that's right. And then it just essays. The Rumpus, this website that I worked on, helped start in San Francisco. We were very essay focused. I never studied writing. I never got an MFA. So that was my way of learning. So I just think that was the forum that I was the most comfortable with writing wise. I just think that's what I knew the most from reading so many, helping edit so many. That'd be a great place to stop, but I'm an honest person and I'm an oversharer. The other thing is there is a world when I looked at this and I was like, hang on, maybe with another year of work, despite being 2 years late with it, I can maybe turn it into a more through line memoir, much like Saeed did with his incredible memoir, How We Fight for Our Lives. And there are so many other memoirs that have inspired me throughout my life. That's when I realized, 1, I was late. 2, there was a pandemic. There's a lot of logistical reasons why I had to make the call that I did. But if I was to give you what I would hope aspirationally my heart answer is also, I wanted this book to read like you were sitting next to me at a bar.
Oh.
I wanted this book to feel like stories. And much like I said to my mom, the log and the stat, it was about hitting notes. It's about hitting moments. If I'm to tell you my whole life, there might be some real rough, boring moments that we kind of had to rush past. This essay collections allowed me to be here was a very important moment. Here was a time that something went wrong. Here was this moment. And it allowed me to kind of lily pad leapfrog. And that gets back to the bar story, which is, have you ever sat next to, there's repetition in this book. Because that's what happens. Somebody's like, oh, well, as I said, I'm sure there's repetition up here with me right now. But there was something about that made it feel like a collection of stories, a collection of tales. And that's what I was interested in doing.
Way to bring it back to the cake.
Thank you.
Tales.
Give me a fork. Thank you. It's a collection of whales. Wow.
Whale tail.
That was really good. Thank you.
Wait, but real quick, are you working on more memoir?
Okay. It's gonna be Carvel cake.
That'll be the cover.
It's gonna be the cover. Oh my God, this is so rich.
Yep.
Sometimes you shouldn't get what you wanted. No, it's delicious. I would never say anything wrong about Carvel. No,
Ghost would haunt you.
I've been walking a lot, and my next project's gonna have to do with walking, and that's kind of all I can say because
okay.
I am also somebody, like I said, I like the cards close to the chest thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I want to do the book proposal before.
Oh, well.
But don't be
so
scared.
it's not with the publisher yet. You're
No.
working on it. So
I'm gonna pitch it.
Okay.
And they're gonna say, absolutely not.
But like, don't worry, I'll be late and it'll be something completely different.
Yeah.
It will end up not being what you want.
Yeah. Just give me the money and I'll come back with like a biography of
Something.
yeah.
And I'd be like, hey, Hoda, could you hook me up?
Could you just give me a hug?
There must be more questions. I mean, honestly, seriously, if you would like a piece,
Well,
please feel
I've
free to.
never had a carver.
Yeah. Wow.
I shall have a small bite here. Okay.
And truly, there's no question too silly, too ridiculous.
I
And
hope
you're
we
just
made
like,
that clear.
What does John Cheska smell like? A rainbow.
Well, I'm curious about what it's like to be good friends with so many writers. Like, do you guys bounce your ideas off each other?
Depends on the writers, I guess. Yeah. I have like a lot of writers friends, but I have a group of like 3 authors that I'm most open with.
This is what I would say. If you are interested in writing,
Well, I'm interested in throwing cake on the floor.
I'm right there with you. But no, if you're interested in writing, it's just like anything in life. Like whatever you're interested in, seek other people out that are also interested in that thing, and you will find it coming into your life more and more. And I understand that that's sometimes not the easiest task.
Well, it goes in and out. Like, you know, when it's kind of almost easier when you're in college or
Right.
dropping out of college.
Right.
And, you know, you have the people, maybe you're even in a class and you're like, yeah. And then you're out of college and you're out in the, whatever the real world is. And then it's like, okay, wait, how do I do this again? How do I, are my best years behind me?
Well,
no, they're not.
But I think if I could
But I
summarize
think
your
that's-
question, like it's hard to be grown and find your community
Yeah.
of like-minded people.
But hashtag writer community, Twitter is
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
a big place.
And also TikTok and also Instagram. I mean, like the key, I mean, social media can be so awful and terrible, but I think the key word is social. I mean, like we've only ever met in person once.
Yeah.
And it was super in passing, like Isaac and Say were hosting the reading for the National Book Awards the year that I was a finalist.
Yeah.
And we met briefly at a cocktail party, but in those however many years, we befriended each other via Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah.
So like if you're like, oh, these two have like known each other for years, like
It does feel like that.
well, like we developed this like kinship over those social platforms, right?
Yeah. But even just for the record, if internet's not your thing, which is great, and I completely understand that decision, and God bless you. I will also like you can like there are ways to find people, like whether it be a library, whether it be a local reading club, like, and you just kind of gotta keep at it is part of it too, because the more you surround yourself with people, like-minded people that are interested in writing, in reading, in whatever you're aspiring to do, like even outside of those communities, like you're going to be more encouraged with it. And that's exactly what the rumpus was for me, because it was, like I said, like, sorry, no, long.
Keep going.
They're gonna kick us out of the bookstore at some point. We're putting sugar all over the floor. I don't know what they're talking. But no, so for me, it was a place called 826 Valencia. So I'm 23 years old, never studied writing. Like I said, I was reading a lot of like old white dudes. But I get out, I'm 23 years old. I get out to San Francisco. I start working at a place called Buca de Beppo, which is like the Olive Garden, but worse. It's probably the most money I've made per hour in my life, though. Yeah, it was only 20 hours a week, and my room was like $500 a month. This is a different time in San Francisco. There are pigeons in the wall, like 5 of us to a 1 room. Anyways, girlfriend probably kind of trying to get me out of the house a little bit. Was like, look, there's a place that says storytelling and bookmaking workshop, and so I went down there, being like, yes, storytelling and bookmaking workshop. I love stories. I love books. Here we go. Finally, somebody will teach me how to make one. And I walk in, and very quickly becomes clear to me that's a place for children. And what I am doing is participating in an open house that's to try and get adults to volunteer their time to work with said children. We didn't actually spill anything on the floor, I promise.
Okay.
Long story short, They go through the whole rigmarole. All right, being a little more honest, as they get started, I realize it's for kids, and I'm like, I want to leave, but I realize I'll look like a huge jerk. And even at 23, I was a big jerk, but I was like, I can't walk out of this room right now because they were like for kids, and I'm like, oh, whoops.
Like the first question was like, do you ever feel like you might want to smack them?
Yeah. No. But so I'm doing the whole thing, but what's on the walls are these incredible pieces of paper that are all typed up and they're covered in ink. And I raise my hand and I say, what are those? And they said, oh, well, 826 Valencia was started, and you guys, for the record, there's an 826 Boston. It was started by Dave Eggers, McSweeney's, and the whole idea is it's a creative writing nonprofit for children. Each of these pieces of paper are from a manuscript that actually turned into a published book. And they're all from Dave's friends, but they're covered in ink markings to show the kids that as much as writing is an independent art, that by finding friends or people you care about, or teachers or volunteers here at the center, people can give you feedback on your stories and they will make it better. You don't have to take all the feedback, of course, but it will help and you will build that community. And up until that point, I thought writing was a gift from God. I thought you either had it or you didn't. I thought the people that knew how to write sat in ivory towers and they typed beautiful manuscripts and they didn't take a single edit and they sent it to New York and they got a cover on it and they had $1 million. None of that's true. I wish you could see my bank account right now. Lower than when I worked at Book of the Bell. But it didn't change the fact that that had a moment. It was the first time that I thought writing can be a craft. It's not a gift. It can be something you worked at and something you can get better at. And what makes you better? I grew up working on cars, and that's just to get like, it's in the book a little bit. Anyways, Athol, Massachusetts. That's Dirtbag, Massachusetts. You can't call a book Asshole, Massachusetts. So that's why it got called Dirtbag, Mass. I tried. Anyways, Athol, Massachusetts, which again is a beautiful place that I love actually very, very much. But like there was that pride that we had. What did I do there? All my friends, we worked on cars. I was the worst. I had little hands. I could get into things. I was younger than most of them. But for the most, I don't have a technical bone in my body. But because Corey, because Mike, because Chris, because Ryan, because Brian would sit there and work with me, I got better at it. And that's how I think writing. So if you're sitting at home being like, why the hell? What the hell? Like, one, just do it. Read more, write more, always. That's the first thing. But second, find your Ryans, your Brians, your Coreys, your whatevers who will help you.
And if you're interested in writing children's books, scbwi.org is a great website. Society Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. What's the matter?
I thought it was going to turn into a movie next door to John Krosoczka, but it was a real.
It was really.
I'm sorry. Say it again. You say it started with S, and then a bunch of random letters. So I thought it was Sheska. Sorry, go.
scbwi.org.
Say it again one more time.
scbwi.org.
Great. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on it.
That's okay. It's okay.
Can you talk a little bit about the editing process when you finally got to start working with an editor and refining this from what you said before was, pretty essays that you interspersed your real life dramas into what it then became?
Mm-hmm. There's just something like so special that comes from somebody taking the time to read what you've worked and then like give you feedback that's going to make the story better. And so I got very lucky in that my editor is a woman at Bloomsbury. Her name's Nancy Miller, and she did a wonderful job. Basically trying to find, like, I had these messy stories like you just said, but she kind of was able to find that overarching arc that makes it really work, not just as a collection of disparate stories, but as a whole. And she was the one that pushed me very hard to like write even more about what happened with my parents. And if you read the book, you'll or if you already have, the first essay and the last essay are very much the bookends of the book. And Nancy really pushed me to write those. It will come as no surprise if you actually read those all back to back, you skip the middle, it will read as one long essay. And thankfully I didn't know what to do with it, but it was just not Nancy, but my agent was just like, what if you cut it in half? And then boom, it worked like that. So that, again, that's like, just for the record, Dirtbag, Massachusetts. I wanted to name it Asshole, Massachusetts. It wasn't me that came up with Dirtbag, Massachusetts. It was my buddy Jason Diamond.
Great name too.
A great name, and he's a wonderful author in his own right. There's also this great, like, just to give like the copy editor, I have progressive views on grammar.
Oh, copy editors are the unsung heroes. in
Yeah.
Publishing.
And so my copy editor killed it. Then I had another friend, John Ray, who's a novelist who wrote this incredible book, Godsend. He wrote this incredible book, Lobo. He then took the manuscript and, like, God bless my copy editor, but he is like whatever the opposite of progressive views on grammar are. And he like tuned the thing like it was a watch. Like there was a Google document edit on every line from him. So again, not to be all like it takes a village, but like what was my experience with the editorial process? I'm very collaborative. Now there are people, and I respect them as that. Just like I was saying, oh, it could be a gift. Like there are actual people who have a gift from God for writing, like they've just been incredible at their whole lives. They don't work on it the same way that I do. But for me, it was very much kind of, I knew I had the stories, but I needed the help in how to place them, how to form them, how to really get them just right. Like I had the clay, and then I made some pretty decent statues out of it. But then some real wonderful people came in and really helped fine tune them. And I would argue that's the answer. Like, what was the editorial process like for me? A goddamn blessing. Excuse my language, but like it was saving. But I understand there are other writers out there who are like, if you touch a word, get bent. And that's the beauty. Like that's the beauty of making art, is there's no real right or wrong way to do it. As long as you yourself are happy with the final product. Somebody that doesn't want to accept a single edit, that's because they're going to look at that final book and they're going to say, yes, this is exactly what I wanted it to be. For me, I knew I wanted this to be the best, most relatable book. So much in like your graphic novel got out there in the world, that could help as many people as possible. And because so many people took the time to edit it, like that's what made the book what it is today. So wonderful would be like the short answer.
Speaking of,
Yeah.
aren't you gonna read a few pages for us?
No, Linda,
You don't?
good to see you. Am I?
Likewise.
Yeah, hi.
Likewise, hi. Yeah,
Did
that's
you
me.
see that? I spotted that right there. No. I feel like we've already gone over by like half an hour.
Did you read the audiobook?
If you want to hear me read the book, you can read the audiobook, which
Is Odyssey on Libro.fm?
Of course.
So Libro.fm is the way you can buy audiobook downloads and support indies. So it'll be right on their site. Yeah.
and I think we could end it here because it has been going long and the cake's melting. I want other people to get up
Liv
here.
Will is
All right, we'll do one last question, but real quick about the audiobook. Is a very funny thing is that I had a friend who did it and she was like, oh, I had a director. I had all these different people in the room helping me. And I walked in, it was like a closet and like a tin can. And I read it and like, let's just say that there was one guy there recording and I would just be like, I'm trying to remember. There's one word in it that I just like, he was like, you got that wrong. And I tried it 3 more times, just said the exact same way every time. He's like, yep, we're good, moving on.
So is it auto-tuned? Is it
No, I won't lie. There was a part of me that like, oh no, that's a disaster. And I basically almost started crying at one part and I was like, I should retake it. And he was like, well, we're fine. Anyways, going to lunch. And I like, truly, I kind of thought he was doing me a disservice, but I actually think it turned out he was brilliant because people have listened to the audiobook and they've basically been like, that bar thing I was saying, like I wanted to sound like I was just telling you, sir. They're like, that's exactly what it feels like.
Oh, cool.
Right down to the mispronunciations. And then also I get really like emotional. So if you want to hear me read it, that's a good way to do it. Sorry, go.
So I listened to a sample of the audiobook, and knowing you and knowing how vibrant you are, was it hard to speak so slowly?
That's a great question. I did get that is another note that man had to have. Just like slow it down. No, it was I think because like it was such a wonderful moment for me in a weird way. I was above the Stardust Lounge, if you know, like I was in the middle of Times Square, but like not in some wonderful fancy way, like literally just on like level 58 of some random building in a closet, like I said, with a tin can. But it was also the last time in a very long time that I was probably going to read this book cover to cover. Like I will always read sections of it again, but it really was this like weird way of like saying goodbye to it. I did not have family coming in to do different.
Well,
But that's
well, with a
amazing.
graphic novel, you need different.
Well, it's
voices.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, not
like
to,
a radio
we're gonna
play.
flip it on you from like what? Yeah, well, I was gonna. Did you then? Do they have to have like a narrator that says like this happens? Like if there's an action in the panel.
Well, you'll appreciate this. So I was the narrator and the dialogue of teenage Jarrett.
Mhm.
But as the narrator, I enunciated my R's and I sound like a grown man. But as a teenager, for the dialogue, I dropped my ass and to distinguish the two voices to be narrator and dialogue, they did put a filter on it and it de-aged my voice.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You
So-
did have auto.
Yeah, we did have auto tune. So I, as the author, wrote additional narration. And an audiobook for a graphic novel, what we learned the hard way very quickly is anytime anything is being told with the art, you need a sound, either additional narration or sound effect. So there's the obvious of a car, the engine coming to a stop, the door closing. But there was one panel where my grandmother was just like, just had this face of she was just pissed. And that was the beat, just that single image. And so I had to go back to the person who was voicing my grandmother to give me 20 different. Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's a radio play. It's more like a radio play than an audiobook.
Do you remember which cut you went with of the?
No, not the specific one, but it's a friend of mine, author Jeannie Birdsall, who she's a National Book Award winner for the Pendrewicks, and she writes these soft, lovely books. And in real life, she has a bit more edge to her. And we found this undiscovered thing where she always had wanted to be an actor when she was a kid. And so this was her way back.
She did your grant.
Yeah, she voiced my
Oh,
grandmother.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, listen, on that last, I will leave it on one last story that's not in the book, because you just said it with the R's and it just reminded me, and then we can, I swear to God, I'll let everyone go. But one last fun little, like, just the Boston accent thing, right, is something that one has to navigate. When I was 14 years old, I got a scholarship and I got to go to boarding school, and it was amazing, except there was 14 of us basically in a cement block on a hill. All boys. The school was co-ed, but it was freshman year, it was all boys in this cinder block. And I felt I'd never been like really on a plane before. I hadn't really been out of the state, and I had this thick Boston accent because I grew up in the South End, and I felt so ignorant. And so I sat in my room, in my dorm room, and I practiced my R's.
Wow.
And I still say I dear. Like I still
I
say
dear,
dear.
yes, I
still
said
say
dear,
like my
yeah.
R's are still in the wrong place, but I put them in the right place too. If you get me to Boston, if you get me a little drunk, it'll
Yeah.
come out. But
Wait, now I got to tell one more story.
wait, hang on, it's not done. It's not
Oh,
done
I'm sorry,
yet.
sorry,
It's not-
sorry.
it's- we're building.
Oh,
That's why it's taking us an hour and a half past, because
because we keep getting
pregnant pauses. So I'm sitting there, I practice it, I nail it. I eventually get the voice that you're hearing now. I'm 15 years old, sophomore year, and a little movie called Good Will Hunting.
Oh, and then that's the cool thing.
Oh my God, I was mad.
Yeah.
First off, kids in Athol didn't talk with a Boston accent back then. They sure did when I came home from break that year. All of a sudden, Liam still talks like that, by the way. And then even in boarding school, my buddy Unique from Cuba. Where did that come from, Unique? Oh, but he had it, and there I was, just silly without it. So, anyways, it's the thing I get asked. Like I did a bunch.
Where
of
did your accent go?
Yeah, Boston
Yeah.
radio programs. They're like, well,
Yeah.
you don't sound. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, right. Everyone
All
sounds
right.
like
Yeah.
that.
All
All right, your last one.
Okay.
Go.
Last one. Okay. So when
They're like, we're trapped.
Sorry, I know, sorry. My wife Gina.
Nothing but a whale cake to live on.
My wife Gina hates attention, so I won't bring up the fact that she's somewhere here in this building. When she first met, one of the first times she met my father, my birth father,
Yeah.
and knowing it was a complicated and strange history, and it was a graduation party, she found herself alone with him, and he said, "Do you want to fuck?" And she turned around, and he was like, "Do you want to fuck?" Isaac, look at me.
I'm so wrong. No, I know what it was. I know what it was gonna be.
That's what, oh. Thank you, everyone.
Hey!
Come here. That was great, dude. That was awesome, man.